On the first perspective, I'd like to call on Martin Frick, the Deputy Special Envoy to the Food Systems Summit, for his perspective on nature positive. Hopefully you're back in, Martin. Are you there?
I'm here. I'm here.
Go ahead, please.
Well, just coming fresh out of the breakout session, and a couple of thoughts that are in my mind, maybe not as sorted as they should be. But, we know the basic conditions. World Bank basically saying 10 trillion of value created in food systems, but 12 trillion in damage being made. I mean, that doesn't sound like a sound business model, does it? Right? At the same time, we know that when the Wall Street Journal looked into the environmental, social, and governance standards of 5,500 publicly listed companies, there was only one food company that made it to the top 100. So obviously there's a situation. But also there's a big role, I think, for the UN, and some of the things that we are seeing is actually a result of what the UN couldn't do. And here I'm talking about carbon standards. In nature positive production, it's quite obvious that in addition to making profits out of producing food, which food producers do, there need to be an incentive. There need to be some money in doing nature positive production. And a great indicator in agriculture is actually soil organic content, because it tells you a story about the production model, whether the soil organic carbon is increasing or decreasing. If it's increasing, it should be a tradable commodity, because we need to get CO2 out of the atmosphere. So if somebody is doing that, that's worth money, and that should be worth a lot of money. But the methodology is not there. There is no global climate framework. The Paris Agreement doesn't have it. So the question here is, can we build a coalition around that? Can we find a group of countries, producers, companies that would be prepared to agree on a standard? Can our scientific group help us with that? A second issue is technology. In what I just mentioned, and I think it came from Pio in our breakout group, we have technology at our hand that didn't even exist 5 years ago. Cheap sensors where you can really go on the ground without massive investments and verify what's happening. High resolution satellites with unprecedented monitoring capabilities. Financial technology, blockchain, smart contracts, where you can funnel even small and smallest amounts of money directly to the recipients without losing it in transactional costs and inefficiencies. So that can and needs to be harnessed. And then last not least, we need a different mindset in the organizations that give money, because too often we see organizations, development organizations, banks, and so on, who want to obtain a specific result, and they're looking for projects with this lens only. But if a project is empowering women, it does something for better nutrition for children. It improves soil organic carbon. It improves the water quality. It works on biodiversity. Then you should actually think that people are jumping to finance such a project, but the reality is exactly the opposite. So we need to have a mindset to do that, and often we need a little bit of seed money for project formulation so that projects can be presented to the large financing institutions, Green Climate Fund, for example, to stand a chance. So I think in this context, great discussion, and we are very, very much looking forward to working with all of you, because I think that the summit offers us a unique chance to bring these stakeholders together, because it's a food system summit. Over to you, Rick. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martin, for that perspective. And I'd like to reach out and see if Gerda Verburg is on the line. She's the UN Scaling Up Nutrition and past CFS chair. And I'd like to see what her views are on acceleration. Gerda?
Thank you very much. We had an extremely interesting conversation, and we had several IDs, which is mainly create incentives for people to behave and to move into the right direction, focusing on both sustainability and healthy foods and nutrition foods at the same time, like redirecting subsidies, but also debt swaps for governments to get rid of their debt when they start to invest in improving their food systems to make them more sustainable and more nutritious, following their own indicators. And there were many, many more. But I think this all will only be a success if the CFS could come forward with concrete recommendations on food systems for nutrition. It's desperately needed, in my view, to get this guidance and to have the recommendations available for every country and every leader in the world. So if you allow me to make a call upon all negotiators and everyone that is around the table here and involved in the CFS or around, please do your utmost to agree on a set of recommendations that can be very helpful up to the Food System Summit, but that can also guide everyone at every level to get really the food systems we want and need, both for our planet and our people. Thanks.
Excellent point. Really appreciate that. Thank you. Next, I'd like to call on Maximo Torero, Chief Economist at FAO and the leader of the Hand in Hand initiative of Director General Chu. May I ask for your brief perspective on value chain, Maximo?
No, thank you very much. We have a very nice meeting. And one of the issues that for us are really important is no matter what technology we use, if we use digital or whatever other innovation, special technologies, if we don't resolve the problem that we are aiming to resolve, then there is no solution about it. So again, it will be very important if we want to make a game changer is that we resolve the problem. And the major problem we see in the financing of value chains is the inclusion of smallholders in the process. And that's because of an asymmetry of information between what the banks know about the farmers and what the farmers access to. So how we can resolve that is to find innovative ways in which we can help and create the incentives for the financial system to find attractive to be able to link to these farmers, like scoring systems for small farmers or mechanisms that will use digital technologies to be able to link with the financial system, like through warehouse receipt systems. So again, trying to find those innovative solutions is what we need to do to be able to come up with solving the specific problem that we are facing. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Next, I'd like to call on Lindiwe Sibanda, Linds Agriculture and co-chair of GACSA and director and chair of the Center of Excellence for Sustainable Food Systems. De-risking, Lindiwe, could you give us a perspective on de-risking?
Thank you very much. We had an exciting group, and the key question where we teed off from was, where do you start when you're de-risking? And it was clear that we all granulated towards the farmer and the SMEs. When you're de-risking, you're looking at financing, you're looking at technology, you're looking at infrastructure, partnerships, and knowledge. But at the end of the day, finance is key. So what should we be doing? We need to understand the ecosystem of the farmer. There's got to be incentives that allow the farmers to get out there and want to go into new technologies and want to use the capital, the money they access into being better. We toyed around with what the banks are doing, the regulators. We need to touch it, the whole ecosystem of players who are involved in de-risking finance. But what was interesting at the end of our debate, we then looked at the issue of SMEs. Unless we bring in the small, medium enterprises, particularly the medium enterprises, we will not be able to achieve scale. And it's all about impact. Now, what's the best thing that we can do together? We dangled a $1 billion facility for SMEs. And the scare factor that we will put out there is to say, SMEs, particularly when we look at Africa, are mainly the youth. That's the demographic dividend that we need to be investing in pushing our food systems agenda if we're going to transform. Can we put a facility of $1 billion that will enable SMEs worldwide, but looking particularly at Africa to say, they will access that money, they will embrace new technologies, they will be digitalized, and they will be the prime movers for a transformed food system. So we thought de-risking should concentrate efforts within pushing that needle of farmers and SMEs. Thank you. I think that was the crux, and that's what I took away from our group. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindiwe. Thank you for that perspective. Excellent. I'd like next to call on Edson Mpyisi, Chief Financial Economist, African Development Bank. Edson?
Thank you very much. I'd like actually to follow up on where Lindiwe left when she talked about the youth. And this cuts across, all the sectors that we're talking about today, especially in Africa, where 75% of the population are under 35. And Maya used in her presentation, talked about the new farmers, So who are these new farmers? These are the youth. If we're talking about food transformation, food security, especially on the continent in Africa, we have to engage youth. That demographic of 75% under 35 is actually growing for the next 20 years or so. The median age on the continent is 19. You look at the median age in Germany, I think it's about 47. So on the continent, if we want to make any change, and especially in agriculture, where 50% of the youth are still within the rural areas, we really have to engage, the youth. If we talk all the aspects we talked about today, digitalization, adopting best practices, new guidelines that CFS has developed, talking about gender, who is best placed to embrace that? But it's the youth on the continent. So but in terms of engaging with the youth, we need to have, I think, partnership. That is also another very important word that we heard throughout the discussions today. Banks like ourselves, the African Development Bank, there's a lot we can do to streamline youth jobs within the projects. But when it comes now to actually providing the financing that these youth need, the SMEs, we are not best placed for that, as a bank. So we need to work in partnerships with those who can actually deliver that ticket size, or the missing middle, as we call it, to the youth. So what I can say here is, just to rounding out, is that we need to focus on the youth. They're going to be the game changers in food security, the food system on the continent. But in order to achieve that, we have to be in partnerships, with everyone, who's represented here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Edson. And we have one more to go. I'll ask Philip Gao with the Embassy of Brazil to the United Nations in New York to give a quick perspective on trade. Philip?
Thank you very much. In our discussions in the breakout sessions, we saw that there is ample room for international cooperation in helping to produce goods more efficiently, not in terms only of agricultural techniques, but also in terms of the financial mechanisms. So this is one important point I'd like to raise. The other one is precisely related to the importance of international trade in the discussions of the Food System Summit. This is one aspect that we think has received so far not a lot of attention. So we should, in the coming months, dedicate a lot more to this. When we speak so far of international trade, normally we are speaking about export restrictions, meaning what countries should not do in terms of not preventing exports. But we should see the other side also, from the import side, which is countries should, it's an excellent opportunity for countries to avoid putting protectionist measures that would hamper the free flow of agricultural goods, and we should have to have an open and predictable market as a result of these discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Philip.